Hi guys, sorry. Sorry, when I switched slides it lost my lost my audio. So I hope everyone got to read the historical ecology slide. I was just going through that, reading it for you guys. So let's see. Presenter, transition. Okay, so hi guys. So historical ecology concerns the historical interconnectedness of nature and human culture. Historical ecology, as the meeting ground of disciplines, is where we seek information and counsel. We need the diagnostic tools of historical ecology to help us get our bearings, guide our restoration practices, and inform our search for a viable conservation ethic. And that's from a really good book called the Historical Ecology Handbook that I happen to have. If you're going to be doing a lot of this work, or you think you want to engage in a more in-depth study, I recommend getting this book. And Carol has a pretty wordy discussion of historical ecology in the International Encyclopedia of Anthropology. Historical ecology is a practical framework for studying the past and future of the human-environment relationship. Historical ecology guides the construction of an evidence-validated, open-ended narrative of landscape evolution and transformation and treats the totality as a complex system. Historical ecology's comprehensive approach fosters the equitable and secure future of multiple use landscapes, such as public lands and urban spaces, by offering place-based solutions to contemporary problems. So the reason why I put this last one in, even though it's quite wordy, is because I'm assuming, and I think rightly so, that most of you on this call have an interest in a certain place, in practical historical ecology, because historical ecology is often done to provide a reference, like a reference condition to consider site restoration, to understand why a place is the way it is. And this is borne out by the number of people who have done historical ecology within our ranks, the ranks of people in the Florida Native Plant Society. So let's get started with some So if everybody has QGIS available, or if you have your GIS available, so QGIS is a computer program just like any other. Still hear me? Okay, good. With menus and buttons to help you get things done. If it's possible to open up QGIS on another screen while you're watching this, now would be the time to do that. If you can't, don't worry. I'll go through all of this as methodically as I can. Just like an empty Word document, though, you have to provide all of the content. If you're only interested in going back to the 1990s for your historical aerial interpretation, I recommend that you start with Google Earth. So Google Earth Pro is available in a little bit of a roundabout way through Googling Google Earth, and then you kind of have to go through a few menu options to find the download for Google Earth Pro. But it has this very fancy historical slider. So if you have Google Earth Pro, you'll hit this Show Historical Imagery. Make sure that's showing. Yes, that's showing. Okay. So the site that we're going to be downloading an aerial from and doing some georeferencing is Julington-Durbin Creek Preserve in Duval County, which is in Jacksonville. Simply because we have been there on a FNPS field trip. I'm somewhat familiar with the ecosystems, and it's near a pretty populated area. Yes, there was, Anna asked if there was life before the 90s. There was definitely life before the 90s, and that's why I had you guys install QGIS if you had a chance, because QGIS allows for georeferencing, which means you can take these other data layers available, even back to the 1800s, and place them overlain on your favorite location and find out more about that property. Okay, so just to demonstrate the historical time slider from Google Earth. So if this is what you need, if all you need is, you know, the past 20 years, then this is what you'll use. Oh, Sarah says if you don't have Google Earth Pro, you may be able to use the Google Wayback feature, which allows you to pick a time period and download historical aerial for that time. I'm not aware of that feature, Sarah, so you're way ahead of me. Awesome. Okay, so probably most of you in this class are much more interested in longer timescales, preferably before drainage, fire suppression, and development ravaged much of Florida. For this, you're mostly going to have to find data sources beyond Google Earth, although this particular, oh, Sarah is saying that it's for ARC-based programs. Okay, so I don't have access to ARC, so perhaps additional imagery is available through Google through ARC that I don't currently have access to. But very cool. Okay, so the first thing we'll have to do with QGIS is get a base map. So go to plugins, manage and install plugins, and then the plugin is called Quick Map Services. Plugins, all the search bar is right up here. Now if you're on a Mac, sometimes they hide this first row of menu items, and so you might have to pop your cursor up to the top of the screen to be able to see those menu items. Okay, install the plugin. This might take a moment. And everyone is still seeing my screen? Yes, that's what it looks like. I'm going to check the chat. How's everybody doing? Okay, everybody looks like they're doing fine. If you have any problems, please pop a comment in the chat. So the plugin went into web. So it's considered a web plugin because it's pulling base map data from the internet. So you go to Quick Map Services, and I automatically have all of these added, probably because I added the contributor pack, or contributed pack, before I uninstalled the plugin to be able to demonstrate the plugin install. But if you don't have this many images available to you, this is what you'll do. You go to Settings, More Services, Attention, Contributed services definitions are provided as is and are not validated by the plugin authors. Proof of concept for testing only. Okay, so you click Get Contributed Pack. Obviously, I already have it, and then it'll download the pack, and then you'll have more. Oh, and we crashed. Sorry, they just released 3.14.16, so it has crashed a few times. I have learned to save my work over the past week since this new one has come out. So the empty project, Quick Map Services, add Bing, Bing Satellite. So there we have a nice base map, and if you want to check to see what projection you're in, here it is at the bottom right, so you know what kind of, how the world is being represented. How the world is being represented here, because of course we have flat computer screens, and the world is not flat, it is an ellipsoid, and so thus this complicated system. So actually probably going to be actually I think 3857 is probably fine. Pseudo Mercator. Okay. Athena says she didn't have a more option. So you went to Settings, Athena, and you didn't have a More Services option here on the right? We can call after and work on it if no one else is having the same issue. Okay. So now I think we should probably just jump right into getting an aerial. So the place to get aerials is for these USDA aerial flights, which were flown starting in the early 1800s, but most of them were flown in like 1840s, is to go to ufdc.ufl.edu. That is the website for the University of Florida digital collections. These collections are available without having a University of Florida login or a library card. They're available to the public, so these are University of Florida collections. And it has a very handy map search that you can use. And it has a Google Maps based map search. So they have them slightly georeferenced for you, but when you download them, they actually don't contain any spatial data, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm going to pause to check the chat. How's everyone doing? Okay, yes, I can go back to the plugin. Okay, so here we are, back in QGIS, and the way you get to the plugin is plugins aren't usually maintained here in the manage and install plugins. That's where you do the upgrades and such. But to use the plugin or to get information about the plugin, not just its documentation, but to start using the plugin, you go to wherever it puts the plugin. So previously, the georeferencer function within QGIS was in fact a plugin, and now it's integrated into the main QGIS. There's no additional downloads that you have to do. But you see that is within the raster tab rather than being within the plugins tab. Just like that, the quick map services, which we're using for the base map, is is within the web tab because it's a web interface. So if you open up this, you click on the web, and then you open up quick map services, you can see that I have all of these selections for imagery. And if you have one you'd like to try, like I'm not sure what's available without the contributed, but probably OpenStreetMap is available. So we can pull up OpenStreetMap standard. So down at the bottom here is where the settings pane is, which is where I was at, which I think is not where you were at, Athena. So web, quick map services, and then settings. And it take a second for this quick map services settings to pop up. And then, oh, Dimitri, you haven't gotten the plugin yet. Okay, so how to get the plugin. Go to the plugins tab and click manage and install plugins. And then the plugins window will come up. That's where you can find all of the plugins that are available to you. And type in quick map services, or just quick map, and it will come up. Then if you click it here in the menu, then you can click install plugin. Of course, mine says reinstall plugin because I already installed it. Okay, so let's see. It was hard to see the small menu descriptions in a split screen. Yes, okay, that's right. Yes, I'm sure that's, especially if you have me in a small window and you're trying to look at the screen and work in QGIS at the same time. I'm glad you got it, Athena. Okay, so transitioning back to working on getting a historical aerial to download to put into your GIS. So here is the area around Doolington, Durban. Now, keep in mind you'll have to control and scroll. So I have a mouse that I'll show you. Well, I won't show you my mouse, but I'm just using the scroll wheel on my mouse and you have to hold the control button on your keyboard in order to scroll in and out on the Google Maps interface within the University of Florida Digital Collections Aerial Imagery Library Map Finder. So, in order to start, we want to grab everything within Julington-Durban. Now, I know the boundaries of Julington-Durban, and I am tracing them currently with my mouse. So they're about like this. If you did not know the boundaries of your conservation land, ooh, Jennifer, okay, you zoomed out too far. Is there a way to zoom back to the map? Jennifer, are you in this map interface for the University of Florida Digital Collections, or are you in QGIS? And I'm sorry for having to wait. We have, it's probably about a 15-second lag built into the YouTube live streaming function. Okay, Jennifer figured it out. Oh, you must be in QGIS because you found the zoom to layer function. Okay, great. So, is everybody ready to move back to the downloading an aerial from the University of Florida Digital Collections? Okay, seeing and hearing no commentary. I will go back to this. So you want to pretty much cover the area you want to get for the aerials, because if you say click to start and finish up here, if part of your property's here, then as we'll see in the next screen, the stacking of aerials won't pick up that little slice of your property. So once you click once to select area, and then it creates a box, and then you drag it over. So I'm going to do that again so that everyone can see, since it may have been kind of quick. And you can switch to satellite view if that helps you find your conservation area or area of interest a bit better. Okay. So what I did is I pressed to select area. So this is going to select the area that I want to see for, that I want to pull up the aerials from. And then you automatically get this click to drag, and then press to finish. So you'll get a pin here, you get a pin here, and the box will encompass everything here. Then, once you've done that, then you click the search button. Okay, and this is sort of a tabular interface, and it'll show you a little Google Map embed of these flights. So the first thing you need to see, you'll notice, is of course the extent of the flight. So this red box, rather than showing the conservation area that you're working with, it's showing how wide that flight goes. Okay, so where does that flight cover? So they flew the plane in here, 1942. They flew the plane in 1942, and this is the area that they covered. It's a pretty wide range. And since I particularly picked this site because there have been roads, and the reason why I picked a site that had roads is because roads are really easy to identify on aerial map. So when you go to georeference, you need points that haven't changed over time. And since we're comparing places that are probably changing quite a bit over time, it's good to have something that you can click a point and know that it's most likely the same place from one time to another. Now, ideally, you could use survey corners, township section range corners, and I will cover that in the georeferencing series. So in order to get to where you can download these aerial photographs, you click on the blue link here, right above the publication date. And you come to a completely different interface. I'm just going to pause and change my camera battery and see if any questions pop up in the chat. So if anybody's not with me or needs to ask a question, please drop it in the chat while I change the camera battery. Okay, I'm back, and it looks like my audio is pretty good, so if anybody is having a change in audio quality, please let me know. Okay, so this interface, you can see, is a larger Google Map embed, and then it has these long blue squares, okay? So these blue squares indicate the flight, the sort of general, basic georeference of that flight that was flown in 1942. So if you pan down, you can sort of see how that plane flew. And then you can see this is Julington, Durban. And then the green boxes are indicating aerial tiles that correspond to, that are contained, well, that hit the area of interest that you defined. So I tried to define all of Julington, Durban, and these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, these 10 tiles, 11 tiles show, are what, came up in the map search. So you can zoom in, and it won't click one unless it's selected. So even if you think you're on a box, it won't be the one you're selecting until you click it. So that one has pretty good coverage, so I'll click it. So it shows tile number 58, and you can see here's, Julington Creek and Durban Creek. And it shows it's Flight 2C. And so from this location, you can't download the tile. So what you have to do is you have to make a mental note that this is tile number 58, and then go to downloads. So these are all of the tiles that are available to download from that flight. So if you click it, it'll show you a really obscure file name, which has the flight number, the flight date, and the tile number. And then it's in a JPEG 2000 format, so you may not be able to open this on your computer outside of QGIS. So save that file, and it probably goes to your downloads. So I'm going to grab that file and move it into I have a geodata folder. So here's my geodata folder. Let's see if I can. So I normally put these in imagery, and I organize them by date. So most GIS practitioners have a geodata folder, which is where they put data that is not specifically for a project. So if you have data that you're going to use over multiple different projects, it's best to put it in a geodata file that's separate from your project data. So say, for example, you have a project that's called Historical Ecology of Julington Durban Creek Preserve. And in that project, you're going to use the land cover layer available from FWC. You're going to use aerials that you might want to use in other projects. And you may be using the FLMA layer, which is the Florida Managed Areas layer, which could be useful for other projects. So in that case, I have a projects folder that contains, the saved maps from those projects and any project-specific data. So if I have a client that sends me a shapefile of a particular project, then I maintain that project, that shapefile, which is a common GIS data format. I maintain that shapefile and keep it in that project-specific folder. Whereas these more broader types of data, such as aerial imagery or wetlands or a topo map, go in their own folder. So make it aerial 1942, and then I pasted it there. Oops, wrong one. Sorry for the popping up windows. Okay, so the reason why I overlaid when I put this imagery file window over QGIS is because you can click and drag in QGIS, which is very handy. So I just grabbed it and dropped it. Another way to add a layer in QGIS is this Add Data button. It really is the Open Data Source Manager button, but I just call it the Add Data button. I think everybody calls it either the Add Layer button or the Add Data button. You can also use it by clicking Control L, Control Layer, so add a new layer. So a GIS is kind of like PowerPoint. Not PowerPoint, Photoshop, in that it's kind of artistic, in that you can style your layers, especially if you have layers that are lines and polygons. You can make them different colors. You can represent your data in a couple of different ways, but not a couple different ways, basically as extensible as you want it to be. But then also, the data has this spatial component. So the data is spatially oriented, and it has this spatial data associated with it. So that's one of the things that we'll see with this map is, well, we know that's Julington-Durbin Creek, but where did it go? It went to Null Island. So Null Island is 00. It's a place, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Africa, where all the lost geodata goes, because people will take points and they won't have their GIS on. I'm going to check the chat for questions. Oh, Ernie asks, what plugins do I need to install? Ernie, you just need the one plugin for the base map. So go to, it's the Quick Map Services plugin. And since I gave this presentation sooner than I was ready to, I will prepare a handout with this information on it so that it's easier for you guys to replicate this later, or for other people who are rewatching this presentation. But it's called Quick Map Services. I will type that in the chat. Okay, Jean Kelly says, roads are the best for georeferencing, but sometimes not available in areas that weren't developed. Right. A few times he's used a prominent tree in an identifiable area as a control point. So a control point is a technical term for what we're about to do, which is take a point on this aerial here, this aerial that is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and tell it where it needs to go. So you'll take a control point probably here at this road junction. Road junctions are very useful. And I have used, like where a stream will cross a road. I've used a large tree. It's very possible to use those. So if everyone is ready, I think it's time to start georeferencing. So in order to start georeferencing, we need to go to the raster menu. So back up at the top of your screen, in the menu there, in the textual menu, next to plugins, there's vector, and then next to vector, there's raster. Raster is the, I would say, more technical term for an image that is made up of pixels. Oh, Athena has a question. Okay, tried to zoom in. She tried to find the picture, but she can't find it. Okay, so in order to zoom backwards, I should have had you guys, I'm very sorry, I should have had you guys make bookmarks for this area. So what you can do, Athena, is look back to your layers pane on the left side of your screen, and it should have the image and your satellite image and OpenStreetMap. Or, I mean, I added OpenStreetMap, you might not have it. What you can do is you can right-click the Bing satellite layer or whatever base map layer you put in, and you can click Zoom to Layer, and it will pop you back to the full extent of whatever layer that is. Extent is the technical term for the, well, I mean, it's not that technical, but anyways, it's zooming out to only where that layer is in the world. And then you can zoom back into Florida once you're oriented. And of course, if you want to zoom back into the middle of the ocean, you can right-click on your historical area and zoom to layer there. So zoom back to Bing satellite, and then zoom back to layer, back to Bing satellite. So before we move on, I think it's probably a good idea to create a bookmark. So zoom back into Julington Durbin Creek Preserve, which is, if you can find Jacksonville, you can find the mouth of the St. John's, then south of downtown, down, it's out of town a little bit, and then it kind of sticks out like a little thumb there. And this is a skill, if you don't already have this skill of panning around maps, you'll get it quickly, and it makes navigating a lot easier in the real world when you can pan around maps. I mean, I've been doing this for quite a long time, but I know that some people have gotten, excuse me, pretty dependent on navigation, like navigation apps, and have a hard time getting oriented. So this can be really useful practice. Okay, so once we're here, and we don't want to get lost again, so what we can do is create a new spatial bookmark. So it's on this top layer of icons here, and it's blue with a little yellow and white star. And so you can click that, or you can click Control B. So I clicked it, and then now I'm going to click Control B. Okay. So we can name this bookmark Julington Durbin, and we can give it a group. I don't normally create bookmarks myself because, I more or less know where I am, but and I'm also using lots of layers that I know what they are. So you create this bookmark, and it's saved in your user bookmarks. Hit save. And you can show your spatial bookmarks here. And so if you go somewhere else in the world and you click Julington Durbin, it'll bring you back into this area. Hi, Bill. I'm sorry that you're lost. And I'm sorry you couldn't get the chat to work. Yes, there are a number of different places you can find instructions on these various tools. I will compile those instructions for you for the paper I will send out after this. Also, this will be available immediately to rewatch, and if you remember a point in time where you originally got lost, you can go back to that point and play the video from then now, and you won't be kicked off from the video when I'm finished or when the Q&A is finished. It will keep running. So that's possible if anyone is experiencing similar problems. Hi, Bill. Yes, I remember you from other Lunch and Learns. Great. Okay. So I think it's time to continue with georeferencing, getting these points on the map. So in the text menus that are at the top, click on raster, the georeferencing plugin, what is previously the georeferencer plugin, which is what I'm used to calling it, is now just a part of the raster menu here. So project, edit, view, layer settings, plugins, vector, raster. It's about in the middle of that. Oh, hi, Deborah's here. Hi, Deborah Curry. Nice to see you. Okay, so here we are in the raster menu. Scroll down to the georeferencer plugin. You'll get a new window. It's kind of big. I mean, it's big on my computer, so I kind of have to resize it. And it looks intimidating and blank, but don't be concerned. You can definitely do this. So the first thing you do is add the raster that you would like to georeference. Now, we already added it to the map, but the georeferencer doesn't know that. That's not what it does. So you still have to add it to the map. So you can go File, Open Raster, or you can click this nice little Open Raster button. And you can see the raster icon here. It's got little pixels, so letting you know that it's not a vector type. This is a pixelated raster type function. So open raster, and now this is where you'll have to remember where you saved that raster. So if you saved your historical aerial into your downloads folder, that's fine. Or maybe you saved it into your documents folder, or maybe you created a geodata folder like I mentioned that you could do, and that most GIS professionals do, is have a geodata folder like I have, geodata, imagery, and I arrange them by date. So to find mine, I'll go to 1942 and then open it up. So here it is with the creeks, and I have not done this one before, so I'm going to be doing my best to find good control points. So I have two screens, so what I did is I moved my georeferencer to my other screen so that I could visually compare the two images. Wow, this has really changed quite a lot. So let's see, it looks like that road, so I'll bring this over. It looks like this road here is this road right here. So unfortunately we don't have a crossroads here to connect it to. Let's see if that farm is still, nope, too much development. So what I might do is I might hit this road's turn. So that is something that you can do if you don't have much else to work with. And we're just trying to get this somewhere on the map. There will be a large amount of error for this method, picking things that are not very concrete, but it's good enough to get you started, and then you can re-georeference when you have, for example, a good strategy to use is instead of downloading a 1942 aerial and georeferencing to a modern day aerial, you can start your georeferencing backwards. For example, get a 1995 aerial that's already georeferenced and then georeference a 1980s aerial on top of that. So, but we did choose, I chose for you an older aerial so it would be more interesting. So we will do it. So I'm selecting my first control point. So I clicked here, add point. It's a little gray crossroads here with a yellow. And then click here, and I'm sorry, I'm using two screens, so this one is popping up. So it'll say enter map coordinates. So this is useful if you have existing coordinates. For example, if you do have these survey points that have exact coordinates, you don't have to click on a map. You can just enter the coordinates here, but we don't. So what we're going to do is we say automatically hide the georeferencer window, which means when we click from map canvas, the georeferencer window will go away so that we can find the point on our map canvas, which is what QGIS calls sort of the main project window. From map canvas, and then click here in the center of the curve. So it can take some concentration. So you see that the point has been populated here, and then click OK. So we have one control point. Oh, Julie Morris asks, can you adjust opacity to help register the two images? You can't, within this georeferencer, adjust the opacity. But you can, once your image is sort of georeferenced in a not exact way, then you can adjust the opacity of, say, the historical aerial to 50%, and that's very easy. And then you can see where things should line up and don't, and that can help you see control points that you may have missed while you were just eyeballing it. Okay, so let's see if we can find this other road here, because that connection right up there would be really good. So that's probably this road and there. Okay, so you can see it looks like we have a little camera tilt here in the flight. Maybe he was banking, or pulling up a little bit. So we'll go into this intersection and do the same process. So I just clicked the historical aerial here, and then I clicked, and then it opened up this window. The automatically hide georeferencer window is still, checkbox is still checked, and then I clicked from map canvas. And then I'm going to zoom in to the center of that intersection. Usually centers of intersections are safe enough because they usually widen roads from the center line rather than from one side or the other, though there are many exceptions, and sometimes you have to georeference something multiple times before you get it into a place where you can do any sort of analysis on it. So I clicked the map canvas with my Bing aerial, clicked OK. So in georeferencing, the best thing to do is to do things that are broad around the canvas. So we've got two pretty good points, good enough points here, but they're too close together. So we should probably see if we could find maybe where one of these cypress domes hits the road here, or maybe this road is still existing, so we can get something a little farther on the northeast side of the image. Okay, so this has been changed quite a lot, and that looks like it's a school now, so that's not going to be particularly helpful. And this is, georeferencing is a lot of in and out on a map. A lot of change in that intersection as well. So let's go to the creeks. Or maybe this road intersection with the creek. Yes, I think we should do this road intersection with the creek. So we've established that this is this road. So this road here is most likely this road right here. So you can zoom in to approximately where the road meets the creek, since it doesn't look like the creek boundaries have changed all that much, and hit it from map canvas. Hit OK. Alright, so now we have a little better spread of points. Let's see if we can get this, where this Yeah, okay. So see how this sort of, it looks like a floodplain swamp that's handling a stream, crosses over this road here. We're gonna go in there and get right in the middle. Because cypress domes, depending on drainage and development patterns of a certain area, they have expanded a little in their edges in a lot of Florida, but their centers usually do not change. Okay. Ooh, it looks like we have another road here. That may not be the same road. This, however, does look like it could be the same. Yes, it is. Okay. So I'm going to go into this stream and then click here. Okay. So we've got some points kind of around the map. And so we are going to start with the georeferencing process and see how we did. So in order to start the georeferencing process, you click the gear button and it pops up the transformation. So basically the GIS is asking you, how do you want me to put this on your map? Safest bet is linear or polynomial if you are not sure what you're doing. And you always want to make sure you're georeferencing to the coordinates that you clicked on your map. So if we look down at our coordinate system here in the bottom right, it says EPSG 3857. So you see our target SRS here is EPG 4326. That's not good. We want it to be 3857. And we also need to check where it's going. Now, fortunately, this one has it going to exactly where I want it to, which is my 1942 folder, and then it's giving it a _modified tag. And that works great for me, and it's turning it into a TIFF file, which is also great. I don't need any compression for this. I have enough space. And in this case, you don't have to generate a PDF map or a PDF report, although in some cases that can be helpful. And you want to check the box loading QGIS when done. Okay, so this is just the settings. When we click OK, nothing is going to happen, except it's going to tell us that we were off some. So see at the bottom, you have your GCP table. These are your ground control points. GCP stands for ground control points. So your GCP table is telling you your source X and your source Y, destination X, destination Y, and then how far they are off using the transformation, how far they are off from where they expect to be based on the transformation type that you selected in your settings. So because all of this doesn't really mean anything to you without putting it on the map, let's put it on the map and see if we messed it up very badly. So in order to do that, you press the play button. And not too shabby. So I'm really happy that worked out. And let's, as Julie asks, I'm going to remove that one that's in the middle of the ocean, and we're going to adjust the opacity of this one. So in order to show your layer styles, your layer styling, you can double click on the entry in the layers area, or you can right click and hit properties. And the part you're looking for is here in the symbology tab. So that's the third from the top. Actually, just kidding. You want to go to the transparency, which is under the symbology. And then you just dial that down to whatever you think. And you can use the apply button so you don't have to leave the interface. So if you click the OK, right, then it removes the window and you have to click properties again. So here we're at 80%, so let's go to 68. And there we can really start to see some differences. So these differences can either be that we georeferenced wrong in some cases, which looks like his points worked pretty well, except for maybe here. And here, we're a little off on these edges. We can try another transformation, add some more control points along the road. Sometimes I'll add, see, we definitely missed along the road here. We could run some along the road if we can find something else to reference them to in the image. So that is very, very basic introduction to georeferencing. Now for the whole site, right, we will have to go back to, let's see, where is my, Here we go. You have to go back to your map here, right? You want to go back and you say, okay, that was really great, but I don't have anything over here for 1942. So in this case, this is a really good example of when you have some data for 1 year and you don't have data for the rest of your site for the other part of for the other part of that year, for the other part of your site for that year. This happens way more than you would like it to happen. So in this case, we'll check to see, okay, I selected this whole box, right, for Julington, Durban. So let's see, 1960, 1943. How's our 1943? Okay. So we got the other side of Julington, Durban, that, you know, this side of the creek, but we still don't have anything in the middle. 1960, 1952, I mean, that's 10 years difference. Could be pretty significant for Jacksonville, which was, you know, settled and impacted fairly early on. Oh, we have a 1943. And we have just the northeast part of Julington, Durban. Let's see about Flight 6C. Oh, okay. We got some more. You might not get full coverage. You might have to live without full coverage for this year. But you still, with all of the, which we're going to go into some other data sources that you might be able to use here. You might be able to compile a fairly useful map of, you know, the historical land cover of that area, even if you don't have full coverage, even though it's very frustrating. I'm sorry that I have shown you how frustrating it can be, but if you're going to do this work, you have to realize that it could be challenging. Let's check any questions. Ernie says, wow. Yes, that is exactly what I say every time I successfully georeference a map. It's very fun. And Deborah says you can watch the loss of edge of Florida along the Atlantic and Gulf coastal areas. Yes. Yeah, if you want to keep your sanity, I recommend not georeferencing any edges of edges of coastal areas. It will make you very upset. Okay. So what are we gonna look at next? We got you a base map. We did georeferencing. Oh yes, let's talk a little bit about the history of Florida, so that you know more about what you're looking at when you pop up these aerials. So we look at a conservation area, right? It's protected. It's being prescribed burned, hopefully, and we have some idea that this is what it looked like in the past. But we might have a conception of the past that may not correspond to what actually happened on the site. So, you know, Native Americans in Florida and the Southeast had, you know, large cities and trading, and they did summer burning. You know, Bernard Romans, who was walking through Florida in the late 1700s, says, the woods are frequently fired, and at different seasons, in order to have a succession of young grasses. So those are little F's that they use in old literature. Just look a bit strange, but you say S. And then, of course, we had a succession of Europeans come through Florida, introducing, invasive species and settlement, religion. So starting in 1513, we had Juan Ponce de Leon in the East Coast, Hernando de Soto, Tampa Bay, 1539. 1559, Don Tristan de Luna y Arellano in Pensacola. 1569, Pedro Menendez de Aviles, St. Augustine, and he established St. Augustine. So a lot of these impacts came before we have very good documentation for Florida. William Bartram was 1774. A.P. Garber, 1877. Harper, early 1900s. So that is where maybe your historical society can help. You can see if any of these explorers' accounts, any of these explorers' pathways, or if there's any war documentation for, sometimes they would send botanists or other people who might be documenting what they were walking through for these expeditions. And of course, I didn't have this for Central Florida. I did look through all of these explorers and try and skim and see if there was anyone who wrote about my particular site in Central Florida, and I couldn't find anything. But if you're along the Kissimmee River or the East Coast, especially St. Augustine or Tallahassee, you could get lucky in this. Some quotes that can be really useful when you're trying to figure out if what the explorers are saying, or what the General Land Office surveyors are saying when they talk about a sandhill. So Bartram says, "The pine grows past. We immediately find ourselves at the entrance of the expansive, airy pine forests on parallel chains of low-swelling mounds called the sandhills." And he does talk about kind of generally where he is. So if you're lucky enough to be on one of Bartram's routes, then that could inform your historical ecological investigation. And then after William Bartram, it was back to Spanish control. We went back and forth. Florida was very minimally populated this time with settlers. There's Native Americans and escaped slaves. And the General Land Office surveys started in 1824 and went through 1848. So I want to kind of show you where you can look for that information and generally what that looks like. So here you go to labens.org, and that's the Land Boundary Information System. So it's managed by DEP, and they have this very nice website about it has a good bit of geodata on it. So they have certified corner records, and then what we're looking for is here, GLOW, General Land Office Early Records. And so if, say, we go 1-1, and I'm going to do a whole session on the General Land Office surveys, so don't get nervous that I'm going through this quickly. So you can see what we come up with are original survey plats in color, black and white, and field notes, which are very confusing and extremely useful. So say we pull up the original color plat here. Hopefully it is good. Nope, not very useful. Let's try black and white. Okay. So this is what it looks like in black and white. Township 1, Range 1, south and east. We have table of contents. And it says the people who were there, Benjamin Clements, and the date, 1824. So my area was surveyed first for, the larger area, townships, in 1844, and they didn't come back to do the section lines, which are these lines in the center, until 1848. So, all right, so I just wanted to show you what that looked like. You can also, GLOW records, yeah, they have a, BLM has a GLOW records website that you can look at, and so some of them are more interesting, like different colors and scanned in different qualities, and but the search function is a bit different, and we will go over all of this in later Lunch and Learn. Okay, And then 1877, A.P. Garber walked through Florida. He says, "On this elevated or salamander land, where these vigilant miners display wonderful activity in the construction of a great number of diminutive mounts, I added to my list Helianthemum carolinianum, Carolina frostweed, Stipulicidus cetacea, Ryland scalypink, Polygala grandiflora, showing milkwort. I added the common names. Runcosia tomentosa vermonophylla, which is now Runcosia reniformis, and Desmodium triflorum, three-flower. So these are really fun to read, and I very much recommend that you go through these old explorers, and I will compile lists and where to find their information, where to find, their where to find what they wrote in the document I send out after this. So things that can impact your site. Human impacts are really big. And so in 1815, the first circular sawmill was put to use near Jacksonville. Why is that important? Well, that means that Florida really started to be cut down quite a bit. So if we look at this, aerial right here, there are not a lot of trees. And, tree density also, I think, was naturally a bit lower, but also records indicate that, during this time when the trees were started to be cut down because of the sawmill demand, the existence of sawmills and the high demand for wood, they picked the largest trees to start with. So the largest, oldest longleaf pines were selected. So, see, big difference in tree cover, if we can. Yeah, big difference. And in Julington, Durban, it's not shady place. So it's not it's not like you're standing in shade most of the time. It's pretty sunny and hot out there. And, if you come in here at the main entrance, you would say that this is probably more representative of what it looked like back in the day. And not so much here in the center. Okay, so, in 1861, Florida secedes from the Union. 1883, Pensacola and Atlantic railroads were built. 1884, the Sanborn fire insurance maps begin to become available. So these are really good if you're in a very developed area, and they tell you a lot about ownership. So this is something that Paul Schmalzer, he is our science committee chairperson. He's done extensive historical ecological investigations in Cape Canaveral area, and he used these Sanborn fire insurance maps because the Cape Canaveral area has been has been developed for quite a while. So let me see if I can find where I put those here. Here we go. Okay, so this is also a University of Florida digital collections, and it's ufdc.ufl.edu/Sanborn. And so it has a nice little search function, and if you can see, the data is just very localized to downtown areas, areas that were developed. These were, fire insurance maps created for this insurance company who was, insuring buildings and buildings. So, really cool to look at. You can see drugs, dining room, hotel. It's a fun way to explore your city if you do live in a more developed area. Okay, so you've seen the Sanborn fire insurance maps. Let me check the chat to see if anybody has any questions. Yes, Bill. He says he'd like to try this in Titusville and see how it has developed. I hope there's some data from the 1800s. Yes, the General Land Office surveys are available for almost everywhere in Florida from the 1800s. So your data quality is much higher if you can, if you are on one of those township lines. So really, as I spoke to Edwin before I did this presentation, and I think he is very important to think of the General Land Office data as not a polygon. It's not a full coverage map of the area. So it's basically one surveyor who's doing the recording and writing the notes. You'll see his name on they're always him They're always he's. You see his name on the plat. And then there's these big burly guys carrying chains. And these chains are to do as best as possible, accurately demarcate the township and section lines. And so they're not walking into the interior of these township and sections, if they don't have to tell you what the ecological communities are. So if you have a larger site, or a site that's on township section line, township range lines, then you're in luck with this general land office data. And that will be a subject of future Lunch and Learn, and how to interpret these surveyor's notes. Oh, Jennifer asks, will this video be available after the stream is over? Yes, the video is actually available right now, if you back up the video and want to rewatch it, and it will be available immediately upon completion. So, and in 1884 is when the South Florida Railroad reached Tampa. So, development starts to spread out, basically Tallahassee area, northeast, Jacksonville, to South Florida. In the 1890s, turpentining for naval stores really starts to pick up. So we see a lot of cat facing, and our older trees, any of the older longleafs that were left after the logging came through, there are very few places that were spared from logging, and you can see them, and they're really gorgeous, especially if you go up to the Red Hills. Anyway, so many of these older trees have been cat-faced, which is the term for turpentining, and how they turpentine. So they slash the tree in this way so that the turpentine flows into these buckets, and these trees are usually more flammable. So when a fire comes through, the trees are more likely to die, and that certainly impacts age of the trees and whether you have these large trees to look at when you're georeferencing an aerial, or even if any of these trees were used as corner trees, as bearing trees for the General Land Office survey, and then they're no longer there, and only because they were affected by people, by the turpentine industry. Okay, and then we have these series of railroads that come through. The first air conditioner was invented in 1902, and in 1914, World War I broke out, and the first house was equipped in AC somewhere in the southeast. And in 1928, Tobin begins to fly coastal oil exploratory imagery. And I was asked, is there an index map for the Tobin coverage? Probably, Julie. I've never had to use it, and I've heard from people who are able to use it at their jobs, and I will get that answer for you after this is over. And of course, in 1928 was the Okeechobee hurricane of 1928, and if you've ever read Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, you'll know that the Okeechobee hurricane featured a main feature in the crescendo of that book. It's where TK got bit by the dog and subsequently died. So not only have hurricanes impacted human history in Florida, which inevitably impacts our natural communities, they also do directly impact our natural communities via flooding, especially coastal natural communities, but flooding and downing trees and such like things. So consider that when you're thinking about what might affect your site. And that's why I'm talking so much about history, is because history, human history, it cannot be disentangled from historical ecology and what you're seeing on the sites that you're looking at. And then starting in 1906 to 1928, we have these early soil surveys conducted. So these dashes mean that I'm supposed to show you my stuff. So here is the NRCS USDA.gov website for soil surveys. And so you can see we have, here's the date of first soil survey. Is it available? And did they make a web soil survey? So no. There's a lot of no's here. And even when there's yeses, that's something that is very frustrating about this kind of data and this kind of historical stuff, is that when people digitize these books and these soil surveys, they often don't include the maps. So let's see, City of Jacksonville, Duval County. So we have a 1923 from Duval County. That's very exciting. Look, we have a manuscript. I'm going to load it. We go through, we say, illustration. Ooh, good. Sketch map showing location, soil map. Perfect. Great. we're going to have a soil map. Scroll, 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 scroll. I'm looking for the map. I'm looking for the map. And, you know, spoiler alert, there's no map. This is a map of the areas that had been surveyed, the soil survey areas in Florida. And I will send this link in with the document, which will be available to everyone. I'll just put it on the FNPS webpage. So fortunately for my work, I was fortunate enough to know people who work at the Gainesville office, the Gainesville State Office for the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And those people were able to dig through a drawer and find me an old soil survey. And so even though I didn't have a very good camera at the time, and I didn't understand that I needed to light it properly, I took photos of the soil survey. And I mean, they're not great. Obviously, I should have had, you know, kind of this lighting setup that I have here. I should have had a nicer camera, but I do have this map digitized. So some of you may recognize Lake Pickett, Orlando. There's Bithlo. There's the Econ-Lakahatchee. You know, so this is, if you can get a hold of a paper copy of one of these soil surveys, you will be in luck, because then you can have, you can take photos and maybe do better than I did, which I haven't shared them with anyone, so that anyone else can use it. And Deborah Curry is indicating that she's had the same problems. So we have the 1935 Labor Day hurricane. 1942, they start with the USDA aerials. We start with a really huge population boom starting in 1945 in Florida. And then in 1949, we have a fence law to reduce cattle and car conflicts. And so that's when we start to see a lot more roads being built in Florida, which certainly impact your site and the ability of a site to burn naturally. Okay, so those are my works cited. Of course, I'll include these in the document that I send out later. And does anyone have any questions? I'll switch back to my face. I really appreciate everyone coming to this Lunch and Learn. Our next Lunch and Learn on the October 16th, so that's next Friday, is on sea level rise with Gene Kelly. And you should be pretty fired up about it, because we are going to film some sea level rise footage out in the Big Bend region next week, so if nothing gets in the way. So that should be a really good Lunch and Learn. Following up after our climate change Lunch and Learn. And then October 23rd, we got Wesley Knapp, who is a biologist, I think in North Carolina. He does like mountains biology, and he's the lead author on a paper on vascular plant extinction. He's going to talk about vascular plant extinction in the Southeast, because many of these extinction rates are actually estimates, because we don't have we're not sure of everything that's exactly a species here in the Southeast. And then the talk that was supposed to be today that I took the place of is Little Italy Sandhill Restoration with Rosie Mulholland. So she's been doing some excellent sandhill restoration. So if you love sandhills and want to see more of them and want to know what a sandhill restoration looks like and learn from her experiences, come to that one. And then a fuller georeferencing tutorial will be on November 13th. So if you're lost on this one, come November 13th. And then part 3 will be the General Land Office, the GLOW data, which will be very intense, and I'll probably run over again on that day, because that's going to be really intense. And then putting it all together, land cover mapping. I may have to split that into multiple Lunch and Learns, because that's going to be really hard. Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, what exactly... Randy and Mary say thank you. Okay, good. You're welcome. Very, very happy that it helped. What exactly is recorded in the early soil surveys? Did they report the plant communities or some aspect of the soil property? Great question, Stephen. Stephen? Probably Stephen. Yeah, let me bring that back up. Okay. So you can read what they have to say about the soils. Very, very, very useful information. So they describe the ecological community, kind of swamp, consists of low floodplains along the creeks and larger branches of other low-lying areas are more or less covered with weather throughout the year. Comprises an intermingling of soils that is practically impossible to separate into series and types. Okay, it's very interesting. So they mentioned bib fine sand. Well, I'm on the wrong one. Let's open up orange counties because I won't be able to find bib fine sand in Osceola. So let's go down to orange since that's the one I have. Oh, Orlando. They talk about climate. Let's get to the... Yes, the short answer is yes, they do talk about ecological communities some here. Oh, you can't see my screen. So they start out describing the soil here, and then they do eventually give you more useful descriptions of the property. I mean, of the general region of the county. So the tree growth of virgin areas consists mostly of longleaf pine and blackjack oak. And so Norfolk fine sand hammock phase. Okay, so let's go back to my thing here. So see, here's the legend. We've got Norfolk sand and we've got Norfolk fine sand. So Norfolk fine sand hammock phase. It's known as hammock land. It supports a thick, vigorous stand of live oak with some magnolia and a dense undergrowth of briars and shrubs. So that is good information that you might not, that significantly predates the 1940s aerials. And is a nice in-between data point after the 1840s surveys, or 1820 surveys, or 1850 survey, depending on your site. So I hope that answered your question, Stefan. I think that was I think I got it. I know this was a lot of information, so thank you everyone for coming to this Lunch and Learn, and please let me know if you have any additional questions and email me, and I will, probably what I'll do is I will create a document, make it into a PDF, and then post it on the FNPS website, and then in my Lunch and Learn notification for next week's Lunch and Learn, I will include it as a link so that you can find it. And I will also include it as a link in this Lunch and Learn description. So if you come to this video in YouTube, you'll be able to see it in the description down below my face where I'm speaking. And you can copy and paste that to load that link. Okay, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for coming to this Lunch and Learn, and please encourage all your friends to become members of FNPS, or better yet, gift them a membership. Okay? Bye everyone.